A 12-team playoff, will it allow a national championship game to finally be as riveting as the Super Bowl? The show represented by Banks and Jones. Less than 60 seconds, and we'll tell you why. I don't think it matters if the games are actually exciting or not. Banks and Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks and Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks and Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks and Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. Caleb, why do close games matter when it comes to the college football playoff? Because we've had some duds early on, and it's continued to grow and get better. Do close games early matter in the NCAA playoff? Because you always want to walk in the door and make your best first impression, right?
Dave, saying we've had some duds in the college football playoff is the understatement of the century. The college football playoff games have been horrendous. Okay, Michigan, Alabama was epic. The last three national title games the last five. The last close national title game was 2017, 7 years ago. They're all blowouts. I mean, they're snooze fest. It's been the 10-year college football playoff experiment was a failure, except for the fact that they're going to expand it to 12, if you believe in that, because the games have been absolutely terrible. Almost all of them.
Well, but it wasn't a failure because people have kept watching. I mean, I don't understand how you can call it a failure. You'll never fail with Annie Mason Real Estate, AnnieMasonRealEstate.com. Over 40 years of experience, best service and prices in the biz. It's not a failure if you're expanding. AnnieMasonRealEstate.com. I don't see how you're getting it was a failure.
The Super Bowl was the highest rated Super Bowl in history, the most watched American television event in history on Sunday. There's a reason for that. It's because the game was close in 2021. It was close in 2022. It was close in 2019. It was close in 2017, 2016, 2014, 2013. Not 2013, 2012. Every Super Bowl I'm naming had game-winning drives or potential game-winning drives in the fourth quarter. And that is what's making it so exciting. You could survive the 4-team playoff being duds. By the way, the BCS National Championship game was so much more exciting. Remember that Auburn-Oregon game in 2010 or the Florida State-Auburn game in 2013? Those were thrillers.
Yeah, but here's the other thing. A rising sea raises all boats. So I remember when Brian Kelly, and they asked him at halftime, they said, what do you need to do to get back in this game? He goes, well, we need Alabama not to show up. Okay, that didn't sound real smart at the time, but he was actually right. I mean, they needed to raise their game. Notre Dame needed to get, and I'm going to say the big nasties. Some people hate that term, but I'm talking about the big defensive tackles that can move. Those are the guys that separate Oregon from Georgia. I mean, the speed guys are not the difference. Quarterback play is not the difference. It is 2 or 3 or 4 of those guys on a team make the big difference. So that Brian Kelly said to himself, I can't get those guys because they're in the South. And I think a lot of guys said that. I think Michigan said that. Michigan, you pointed out, didn't care about recruiting rankings nearly as much and just decided that, hey, here's what we're going to do. We're going to build a tough physical football team that has speed. I'm not saying slow it down. So I don't think they have to be close early. I think they could be blowouts the whole first 3 years and people will just be up in arms. But the simple fact is the teams that won will love it. The teams that lost, their fans will want to come back the next year and win it. And it's going to continue to grow. So there might be a fall off from the top 4 teams to the next 8, and you'll see some blowout games. But I think over time, you're going to see that water rising, bring teams up. I think they'll be more competitive than the NFL playoffs eventually.
I think one of the things you're missing is that there are ceilings for college football programs that do not exist for NFL programs. No matter what Notre Dame does, it's not possible for them to be a top 10 program. in college football. They have stupid academic standards, and until they get rid of those, they will never get the War Daddies to compete. I also think
Hey,
that
what academic standards are out there right now? When is the last time, by the way, you've heard of an academic integrity
Notre
issue?
Dame doesn't get, so a lot of other schools, players can do summer classes and things like that and do coursework like that's usually not available, but they can do it then so they can focus on football in the fall.
Yes.
Notre Dame doesn't make those exceptions. You have to take all the midterms in the middle of the fall, no matter what. By the way, Notre Dame, look at their record week of midterms for the past 30 years. It's
Well,
a terrible record.
yeah, my
And
point is, I think everybody is going to bend the rules to compete with other teams
Notre
in this
Dame won't.
college
That's their
football playoff.
problem.
Let me finish. In this college football playoff, except for Notre Dame. So if they want to hold by their stance, they're going to get relegated out of the Super Conference, which I talked to somebody, relegation's going to be a thing.
Yeah, and
But
Notre Dame is going the way of Vanderbilt and Georgia Tech. In 50 years, that's all they'll be. But what I was going to say with this, here's what I'll give you. I'll give you this with a 12-team playoff. I don't know what will happen in the semifinals, quarterfinals. I do think the good thing about a 12-team playoff is it increases the likelihood that there's not such a mismatch in the national title game, right? Because the problem has been a TCU can sneak one college football playoff win, but then they go to the title game and they're playing Georgia and they're outmatched. Or a Washington could sneak a college football playoff win and they go play Michigan and they're outmatched. You can't sneak 3 college football playoff wins, right? So if you get,
I think football is the sport that the better team wins the vast majority of the time.
Exactly. So at least if a 12-team playoff happens, I think the national title game, well, let's be honest, it'll usually have 2 SEC teams. But it'll have 2 teams somewhat similarly matched in talent, which will make for a more exciting game. My issue is if these other games are blowouts, man, look, college football just devalued the regular season significantly with the 12-team playoff. Significantly so. They took away the magnitude of the regular season. If you take away the magnitude of the regular season to watch Boise State lose 65-0 to Georgia or Liberty lose 70-0 to Georgia in the first round, and that consistently happens, I'm sorry. I'm going to break from you, Dave. I think you will see fans lose interest quickly because they'll realize they have no chance. Look at the NBA. The 8-seeded fan bases of the NBA playoffs, they don't really watch because they know their team's not going anywhere. And you're going to really hit that moment in football.
Sound like I was going to say the S word. No, but short term, I disagree because I think people will be so excited about the playoffs. It doesn't matter if it's 60-3. Now, Derek says exactly, Caleb. That's why I don't watch college basketball. Your thoughts? Does it bother you if there are blowouts? And there are oftentimes a lot of blowouts in the first day of the tournament with the 116s and 215s. But we're talking about football, so yeah, I think everybody's going to be excited to watch it. And then by the time you get to the third or fourth year of the college football playoff, it's that rising water. It's going to raise all boats because you're going to take that money and evenly disperse it among what I'm told is going to be about 50 teams. So at that point, now it's still going to take 2 or 3 years, right, for a Northwestern to compete with a Georgia, okay? And I'm not saying they'll ever compete, but at least you're raising the waters. You're giving them more money. There's more of an even amount of money to spend theoretically. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but that's the idea. And in that particular situation, I don't think you'll see as many blowouts. So short term, I think fans will live with it. Long term, I think you're going to see number 5 seed versus 12 seed be a nail biter half the time.
I think college football. See, you and I don't disagree. I don't always believe a rising tide lifts all boats. I usually believe a rising tide benefits the boats at the top. And in college football, it's going to benefit the boats at the top, which will be the Tennessees, and those schools will get a significant larger portion of the revenue because they'll be in the playoff more.
But it'll be the 50. I mean, they'll be a part of the 50, so everybody's a part of the 50.
Well, yeah, but I don't know if it's going to be equal revenue distribution with that 50. Here's what I think is happening. I honestly am going to say it. College football's entering its own roaring 20s, which sounds great. If you guys know the history of the roaring 20s, economic boom, everything's going awesome. Gatsby, parties in New York, Harlem Renaissance, the jazz era. And then what happened in 1929?
And we realized that Gatsby was Tobey Maguire. Yeah,
1929, the Great Depression happens, and we find out the entire Roaring '20s was built on a house of cards. That's going to be college football in 10 years if they don't address this. Because right now, I disagree with you. I think there's going to be a disproportionate, I don't know how, but the revenue is going to be unevenly distributed. So I don't think rising tide is going to lift all boats. And I think it's going to collapse the foundation of the sport if they're not careful. Like NASCAR did.
NASCAR made a bunch of mistakes. NASCAR tried to get too regional. That's why, sorry, Washington State, but I'm only taking one school from that state because you're not a big football state. Sorry. Sorry, either Utah or Utah State or BYU. I'm only taking one potentially. Sorry. That's just the way things go. So I think you've got to go with passionate fan bases, not be regionalism. Now let's look at NASCAR for a second. How else did they screw up? Well, they
With the postseason.
wanted what's that?
Because they created a playoff.
The I don't think the playoffs why they failed. I think it was already failing, and that was like a Hail Mary. So the other reason I think that NASCAR fell off the face of the earth is they limited the personalities is one. They had guys getting each other's face. I was at Bristol Motor Speedway and Dale Jarrett walked down the whole front stretch to go get in somebody's face. I mean, that was pretty awesome. And then the other thing that I think they did is they wanted everybody to be level, and that they had those cars of tomorrow. I don't know if you remember that. So how could you make all programs level, which I'm not endorsing, would be some sort of cap, some sort of spending cap on players, which very well could end up happening. My thing with that is the thing I don't like about that is I don't think it's capitalism. Then I can't call and say, Brew McCoy, hint, hint, wink, wink. Would you like to be on a Vol report with me weekly? That to me is not American to not be able to make those. And he couldn't make money from me because there's a cap on what he could get. So that's what concerns me. But I just think there are going to be within 5 to 6 years. I think we can expect every game to be pretty close, especially with the way they've lined it up, where the elite team, which is Georgia nowadays, it's not Michigan even in that category because they lost Jim Harbaugh, but it's Georgia, and you don't want them playing the 16. I'm fine with them playing the 8 eventually, but you don't want them playing the 16 because that's a guaranteed blowout.
See, I think what's going to happen is you're going to see teams be the Jimmy Johnson of college football, and that's why I bring up NASCAR. Jimmy Johnson cares very little about the in-season races as long as he qualifies for the Chase Cup, and he has taken advantage of that to the umpth degree. That's killed NASCAR more than anything. Is Jimmy Johnson totally taking advantage of the Chase Cup rule? You can't blame him, but he's doing it. You're going to see some teams go 9-3. They may rest some starters for a game here or there, maybe even a big SEC game because they know
I do
they're in the
not
playoff.
believe that'll happen. And let me ask you this. I'm going to take the ultimate situation. Okay. The Egg Bowl. I think you mentioned one time you loved the Egg Bowl, right?
Love the Egg Bowl. It's one of my
I do-
favorite
I do
games to
too.
watch.
I do too. I think it's just fantastic. Okay. Ole Miss, if they're at 10 wins and they're going to make the college football playoff either way, are still going to take a lot of pride in the Egg Bowl and beating Mississippi State. And they realize that seeding matters. So I think what you said there, as much as I respect and love you, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think teams are going to tank or load management or anything like that. When you said load management about college basketball, it made me think about football. You can't do that. You can't not play football for too long and just get right back into it.
Dave, I'm going to laugh because of all the examples you could have used, use the team that Lane Kiffin coached. Because if any coach was going to be the first coach to load manage in college football, Lane Kiffin would be the first coach to do that. You and I both know he would.
You couldn't do that. You couldn't throw a game practically against Mississippi State because if you did, your fans would be insane-o. It's different.
Would you
There's
rather-
that passion. Listen, I'm fine with the Cowboys if they play the Redskins the last game of the year. Sit everybody if you're 16-0 and got the first seed. But I'm not okay if I'm Tennessee fan and Tennessee's playing Georgia the last week of the season, and Tennessee's 11-0, and they're going to make the college football playoff and probably get a bye as well. They still better go out there and beat Georgia, Kentucky. Tennessee has a ton of rivals. I don't see load management there. That would be really disappointing.
Okay, question. Basketball. Say in one of those random years, Duke and UNC play each other 3 times, twice in the regular season, once in the conference tournament, and UNC wins all 3 times, but Duke goes and wins the national title. Who do you think has more bragging rights? Really, this is not a debate. UNC sweeps Duke, but Duke goes and wins the national title. Who would you rather be in that situation?
Well, you'd rather be Duke.
Exactly. If UNC can be like,
you didn't lose on purpose.
Okay, I think people rest their starters a lot of times in the regular season in college basketball. Do you think Peyton Manning would rather have beaten Florida in 97 or won the SEC title? I think he's happier that he won the SEC title.
Then beating. Well, if he'd have beaten Florida, they would have still played for the SEC title and maybe the national title.
What if he had beaten Florida but stumbled to Georgia and Arkansas and then didn't go to Atlanta? You think he'd rather do that, or do you think he would have rather lost to Florida and won the SEC title as he did?
I don't know. The guy goes to a bar and throws around beers. I don't know what the guy's thinking nowadays. I don't know what Peyton Manning would rather do, but I don't think you're ever going to have load management in college football. I just don't think you can do that. I don't think players would be okay with it. But I never thought you'd skip bowl games either. So that was something that Christian McCaffrey, who has had a fantastic career, did. And we're all like, oh, that no good SOA. He's a bad person. I can't stand that guy. Well, it worked out for him. Harrell Group Security Solutions, they can make your workplace safer. They can make your kids' school safer as well. We're in private schools now. We want to get in public schools. HarrellGRP.com, HarrellGRP.com. Harrell Group Security Solutions, highly trained individuals for you. All right, so we'll just ask you this. Do you really believe there will be load management in basketball sometime soon? Because really the stage is already set for that, or load management in football because of the college football playoff?
Yes. I think there will be in college football. Well, there already is in basketball. People started doing it last year because this is partially the selection committee's fault. They made it clear they're not going to put any weight on the conference tournaments whatsoever. So you notice coaches who knew their teams were in the NCAA tournament, they didn't even play in the conference try to play in the conference tournament last year. So I don't think I think that's done. Load management, the conference tournament is a thing now. College football, where it'll happen is you're fighting for the second. It's the second or third seed. It's the second or third place finish in the SEC. Either way, you're going to the college football playoff. But if you finish second, you got to go play that other game, which is the SEC championship. Why not just finish third and get a bye?
Because you could potentially be playing on the road or not get a bye. You can't. With the way they set it up, I don't think you can do that.